On today's episode of Locked On Wild, is this the last go for Matt Zuccarello in Minnesota?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we evaluate the 2024-2025 season for Matt Zuccarello. We'll take a look at Zuccarello's production throughout the season. We'll hand him a letter grade for his efforts, and we'll look more importantly at whether or not this is going to be the final go-around for Zuccarello, not only with the Minnesota Wild, but for his career as well, and where does he stand amongst the rest of Minnesota Wild history as far as production goes. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, host of Seth on Sports, credentialed media member. And for Matt Zuccarello, it was another solid season for Zucky. He said at the end of last season that he needed to shoot more. He actually shot less this year, but ended up with more goals, fewer assists. So a little bit here, a little bit there. The numbers ended up essentially evening out with a large bump in ice time throughout the season as well. So for Zuccarello, he played in 69 games this year, which was the same number he played in last year. He had 19 goals, which was higher than his output in 2023-2024. He had fewer assists. He went from 51 assists in 2023-2024 to 35 this past season. So as a result, his points dipped from 63 to 54. And that is a 3 straight year decline in the points department for Zuccarello, but he goes from a -5 to an even 0 as far as plus minus goes. His penalty minutes were down substantially. He had far more even strength goals this past season with 16, just 7 even strength goals the past season in 2023-2024. His power play goals dropped to 3 this year, and he had 13 total assists on the power play. So 16 power play points after 33 last year, but far more even strength production for Zuccarello this year with 16 goals and 22 assists. So 38 regular even strength points for Zuccarello this year, which far exceeded last year's total. This year, Zuccarello played in 19 minutes, 39 seconds average time on ice per game. His shots on goal dropped to 151 this year, but his shooting percentage rose to 12.6, which was actually the highest since 2021-2022. Shots on goal, his shot attempts didn't drop by much, 334 to 294. So not a ton of shot attempts dropped, but the shots on goal dropped by 22. And still, you had more goals. So he was a little more selective in the shots department, and as a result, had more goals. As far as the other numbers, 48 blocks, 32 hits, 29 takeaways, 77 giveaways. That is the high water mark for his career. And I think that speaks to something that was an issue for the Wild for pretty much everybody on the team, was just some kind of carelessness with the puck at points throughout the season. Some of the other numbers for Zuccarello this past season, his Corsi 4 percentage in even strength situations dipped below 50% to 48.3%. His Corsi 4 percentage in all situations was 55.2, which is below his career average. His on-ice goals for per 60 was 3.9. Slight dip from last year, 2.6 as far as goals against, which is the same as last year's number. Point shares. He had 3.6 offensive point shares this year, which was the same number as last year. Slightly better defensively, 1.7 defensive point shares this year. So he goes to 5.2, which is higher than he had last season. In the postseason for Zuccarello, he had 1 goal and 2 assists for 3 total points in the 6 games. He had 8 official shots on goal, 13 attempts that were blocked. So 28 total shot attempts in the 6 games for the Wild in the postseason. And just, a lot of what we expect. Zuccarello is a very good playmaker. He's a good facilitator. He stepped up and tried to add more goals to the repertoire this year. But something that has kind of become an interesting kind of side story is just how the production kind of fluctuates for Zuccarello when Kirill Kaprizov is not on the ice with him. This was a huge issue 2 years ago in the second half of the season when John Hines united the Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy line. The production of Matt Zuccarello and Marco Rossi, and at times Marcus Johansson, at times others on the second line, that dried up pretty good. So Zuccarello has certainly been one who has enjoyed his time as Kirill Kaprizov's most common line mate, but the production just has kind of differed when he is paired with others. Got off to a really good start to the season. He had 6 goals in the first 2 months of the season, had 14 total points. The only month in which he really kind of went quiet was in February. The first few games before the Four Nations face-off and the few after, just 1 point in the month of February, and then finished in pretty solid fashion. Started the series against the Golden Knights with a goal in Game 2, but kind of was quiet otherwise, which again was part of the issue as to why the Minnesota Wild were not able to advance, weren't able to get over the hump against the Vegas Golden Knights. But Zuccarello has been, he's been a very key contributor for this Minnesota Wild team over the last few years. And a guy who, when he came here, when he was signed, came here and, you didn't really know what you had with him because it just didn't seem like he really fit. And, he has now been tenured with Minnesota for 6 years and has become a key, not necessarily a core piece, not somebody that you would put in the inner circle as far as importance goes, but he's definitely a tier 2 at this point for the Minnesota Wild. Obviously getting up there in age. He's 37 now, and this looks to be the final year of his – it is the final year of his deal, but this looks like it could potentially be the final year of his NHL career as well. He'll be 38 before the season starts. So we'll just have to wait and see kind of how he does and how he feels, if he decides that maybe he's got one more in him or if he does hang it up after this upcoming season. We'll assign a grade for Zuccarello's season. We'll kind of dive into the particulars for that, as well as taking a look at where Zuccarello lines up amongst all-time Minnesota Wild players as far as production goes. That's all on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. One of my favorite features about Game Time, this is something that I actually had to deal with at a concert years ago that I went to, ended up having kind of obstructed viewing. Now, I was still able to see what was going uh, on the stage, but I had to kind of tilt and lean over to be able to see effectively. You don't ever have to worry about that with Game Time because they offer you a panoramic seat view before you purchase your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We got another crossover coming up for you tomorrow as we'll be joined by Joey Erickson of Locked On Stars. An interesting parallel between Jason Robertson and Kirill Kaprizov. Those two players are going to be linked for the rest of their careers. So we'll dive into that a little bit, plus a conversation with Dallas having a new head coach. Joey wanted some of my thoughts as to what the changes looks like for the Wild when John Hines took over. So catch that coming up for you first thing in the morning. And then we'll have another player eval for you later on in the afternoon. We're going to talk about Joel Eriksson X season coming up tomorrow. So let's get to the letter grade for Matt Zuccarello. And again, I've got the point formula here that I think does a really good job of factoring in all the different components for a particular season. And we start off with the games played. Now, and I love how this kind of got put when I was constructing this. Is availability is a skill, especially over 82 games. Zuccarello played in 69 games, so he hits the 15 out of 20 category for that game number. Anywhere between 65 to 74 games played is 15 out of 20 points, so he gets 15 out of 20. As far as on-ice impact goes, Zuccarello is still a .75 or better point per game player. He was at 0.78 points per game this season, so he gets the full 15 out of 15 there. As far as analytics go, his analytics were in pretty good shape this year, so he gets 5 there. He is an instrumental part of the power play. He gets 5 there. Doesn't factor in on the penalty kill really at all, so he gets 10 out of 15 as far as the analytics go. Importance to the team and his role. I elected for the consistent top 6 contributor. He has played a little more second line over the last year plus than he previously did, but he still is somebody that is expected to carry his weight in that spot. And when him and Kaprizov are going, it is tough to contend with, to say the least. So I put Zuccarello in the consistent top 6, which means he gets 15 out of 20 there. Consistency and clutch. I went with the 9 out of 15, which factors in hot and cold streaks. Again, because there were just some parts of the season where things kind of went cold in the production standpoint. The month of February, and I know it's not like a full month, but it was 8 games with just 1 point in that span. And that was at the time in which Kirill Kaprizov was out of the lineup. So some questions continued about that production if Kirill is not on the same line with him. And then in the playoffs, just felt like he was a little on the quiet side. Kaprizov, Boldy, Foligno, Hartman were really the 4 that were kind of carrying things. Marco Rossi obviously scored a couple of goals as well. But those are the main 4 that were kind of carrying the action for the Wilds, and it just felt like other players went quiet in those spots. So I'm going to go 9 out of 15 for the consistency side of things. As far as the growth goes, it was just a similar season to what we've come to expect from Matt Zuccarello over the last few seasons. Just a consistent veteran presence on the team. So he gets the 9 out of 15 there. I thought maybe about boosting it a little bit because he has become a pretty underrated leader on this team, and somebody who, the same vein that I praised Brock Faber during his season evaluation, Matt Zuccarello is in the same category. He is somebody who seems like always talks after games, even after tough losses. Seems like he's always available to the media to go over what went wrong. He talked to the media quite a bit this past season when injuries were really wreaking havoc on the team. And even considering his injury situation, which was something that he had no control over whatsoever, he just had another solid season for the Minnesota Wild. So you get 15 out of 20, 25 out of 30, 15 out of 20, 9 out of 15, 9 out of 15, for a grand total for Zuccarello of 73 out of 100 points. So a 73 grade. Now on our rubric, on our grading scale, that falls into the B category. You're probably listening and saying, well, how can it be a B if it's in the 70s? Well, the point tiers play out like this. 100 points to 90 points is a franchise cornerstone player. 89 to 80 is elite and reliable. That's considered an A. 79 to 70 is a B, a key contributor. 69 to 60 is a C, a solid but replaceable player. 59 to 50 is a D, depth piece or disappointment. And less than 50 points is an F, which means need a reset. So Zuccarello falls into the key contributor part of the scale, which I think that's the right spot for him to go. Not necessarily even about the tier, but the grade as well. The games played has to factor in. The quieting down during the postseason has to factor in. So you factor that stuff in. He still is very solid during the regular season, and I think he can still be a productive player for this team this upcoming season. So he is, by the definition, a key contributor for this Minnesota Wild team. So 73 out of 100. Let me know in the comments section what you think his grade should have been. Do you think I was too harsh? Do you think I was not harsh enough? Let us know in the comments, and we'll discuss it further. Now, as far as Zuccarello's contract goes, he is in the final year of his contract, a $4.125 million 2-year extension that he signed for the next couple of seasons. Zuccarello does have a no movement clause. He can't be traded or sent to the minors or waived without player approval. And he has kind of floated that this could potentially be it. He's got a family, got a couple of young kids. Could be the time that Zuccarello says, you know what? I think that's that. He has said jokingly that he would stay to try to get Kirill Kaprizov to lock in to an additional contract. But as of right now, you look at where he slots into the lineup, he's going to be a top 6 player again for this team, unless things go catastrophically wrong. And he represents an opportunity for the Wild to fill a spot in the lineup once he does eventually retire. Whether he decides to give it one more go, whether he calls it a career at the end of this year, there's going to be a spot in the top 6 that will need to be filled for the following season, the 2025, the 2026-2027 season. So I could see this playing out a couple of different ways. As far as the lineup combinations go, if Zuccarello is productive with Vladimir Tarasenko, if he gets some looks on that second line and it actually works out, I could see the Minnesota Wild having a scenario where they go Kaprizov and Boldy on the top line, and they go Zuccarello and Tarasenko if that combination works out. If it doesn't, it will likely be Kaprizov and Zuccarello on the top line. I would imagine this is what the Wild start with. If Boldy and Tarasenko show no signs of chemistry together, then you may get a flip. You may get a swap from top to second line, but he's going to mostly be a top six contributor. He's going to be a power play top line contributor. Those will not change for Zuccarello until the day that he finally decides to hang it up. So 73 out of 100 for Matt Zuccarello, a key contributor for this team. I want to finish today's show by just taking a look at where Zuccarello's numbers amongst Minnesota Wild players currently rank. The answer may surprise you, and we'll discuss that as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got you covered all the way through the rest of the offseason and, of course, into next season as well, working on some tweaks and some changes that you will see when we kind of flip to the new season come September 1st. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be rolling with crossovers and player evaluations through the rest of the month of August. Matt Zuccarello, where do you think he ranks all time amongst Minnesota Wild players as far as points go? Would you have him in the top 10? If you said yes, playing along in your car or wherever you're listening, if you said yes, you would be correct, because Matt Zuccarello currently ranks 8th all time in points. He has 335 points in 393 games played for the Minnesota Wild. As far as the goals department goes, Zuccarello is 12th with 103 goals on the season. And I mentioned this a little bit in the beginning segment, but he was signed by the Wild initially to a 4-year deal, and he was coming off of a very short stint in Dallas. He got hurt when he went to the Stars, only played 2 games with them. He was coming off of an interesting 2018-2019 season. The Wild didn't really know what he was going to be able to give them. He had to work his way back into being ready to play. So it took him a couple of seasons to kind of find his place on the roster. And then Kirill Kaprizov came about, and that seemed to really click. And that has been one of the more prolific duos in not only Minnesota Wild history, but it's been one of the most prolific duos in the NHL ever since. And obviously, the 2021-2022 season, Zuccarello just missed out on an 80-point season. Had he not gotten hurt and missed the last handful of games of that year, he definitely eclipses 80. He's probably closer to 90 points. He missed 12 games total, probably closer to 90 points at that point. But he has become a very reliable, steady producer for the Minnesota Wilds over the course of his tenure. And he played 9 years for the New York Rangers. Now, a few of those years, he was getting his feet wet at the NHL level, so they weren't full seasons per se. But in 9 years with the Rangers, he had 113 goals, 239 total assists. He is 10 off the goals pace. He is 7 off the assists. And so he, in over 100 fewer games, is quite close. He's 17 points shy of the mark that he had his entire tenure with the Rangers. And the fact that he's already in the top 10 as far as production goes is crazy. But at the same time, with the Wild having only existed for now 25 years, there's not a super rich history of prolific point scorers that have donned Minnesota Wild colors over the years. But he's going to be known, I think, as one of the more one of the more high volume playmakers that has played for the Wild. He's not on the vein of Kirill Kaprizov or Marian Gaborik, but as far as the skill that he has brought to the table goes, he is going to be one of the more skilled players that has played for the Minnesota Wild over the course of his career. And, I know we love to bring it up because it's not something that super matters, but not bad in the shootout as well. To be honest, I hope we don't ever have to really deal with shootouts again. It would be nice to just get rid of them entirely and just come up with some other way to determine outcomes at the end of overtime games. So Zuccarello, pencil him in for the top 6 this year, and we will see if he is able to keep the production going. And if he can get back into the mid-70s as far as games played goes, $4.125 million is going to look like a very nice bargain for the Wild. I do wonder, not to go super far down this road, because we'll spend, as we get closer to the season, we'll talk about what happens if this, what happens if that. But I do kind of wonder if the season were to spiral for the Minnesota Wild and the opportunity came for Zuccarello at this point in his career to maybe go back to the Rangers. He's still very well liked by Rangers fans. I wonder if the opportunity presented itself, if he would take it, or at this point, if he is so entrenched in Minnesota that if Bill Guerin asked, that his preference would be to just, no, I don't want to uproot. I've been here for 6 years. I would rather just play this out and call it good. Not that we need to be worrying about potential trade deadline scenarios right now, but it just is something that kind of I've been thinking about anytime Zuccarello's name pops up. But all told, a solid season for Zuccarello. As far as 2025, 2026 expectations are going to go, consistent production is, I think, the big one. You can boil it down to a simple phrase: consistent production, whether he be with Kirill Kaprizov or whether he be on the second line with Vladimir Tarasenko. Whatever the case may be, whoever is on the other side of that line, let's get consistent production. And if the Wild do that, they should hopefully be in pretty good shape. That's our episode for today. Again, we appreciate everybody tuning in as you do on a daily basis. Let us know in the comments section what you thought of Matt Zuccarello's 2024-2025 season. We'll have a poll for you to be able to vote on. But if you've got any Zuccarello thoughts in the comments, let us know. He's become a pretty key piece for this Minnesota Wild team. Would you want to see him for another year after this, or at this point, is it just kind of one last ride and time to go? All your comments on YouTube. Let me know whatever is on your mind, and we'll answer the interesting ones on a future episode. But just looking at kind of what we have the rest of the week as well. As mentioned, we got a crossover with Joey Erickson of Locked On Stars coming tomorrow. We'll also be doing a player eval for Joel Eriksson Ek, and coming up next week, we'll be lining up more crossover episodes with other Locked On hosts. And that's going to be how we roll through the month of August and gear up for September 1st when we will flip to next season. We'll get you set for 2025, 2026. September 1st it starts. So mark that down and stay with us all through the rest of the offseason. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.